Hello, Recapped Mr. here. Today, I'm going to explain a drama, romance film, Good Will Hunting. Watch out and take care. Will Hunting is seated in his living room, reading a book. His close companion, Chucky Sullivan, arrives at his residence to fetch him up. Will joins him, and they get in the car and drive away. Professor Gerald gives a theorem to his pupils at MIT and tells them that whomever solves it will have their success featured in the MIT newspaper. Will works as a caretaker at MIT. A board in the corridor displays the provided theorem. Will is sweeping the floor quietly. He glances at the questions put on the board with awe after the kids have left. Will and Chucky head to a pub. He is in a good mood, but Will chooses to leave early and returns home to work on the theorem he saw earlier in the day. The next day, he cleans the house while solving the theorem on the board in the corridor. Will and Chucky are playing baseball, and Will continues hitting Chucky while whining that he is crowding the plate. Will appears to agree when Chucky mentions going to a Harvard pub the next week. Gerald is at the MIT alumni reunion. His classmates approach him and inquire about the individual who solved the theorem. He is taken aback to see the solution displayed on the board. He asks many students if they solved it, but no one comes forward. Will, Chucky, Morgan, and Billy are going to see a baseball game. Will recognizes one of the guests as his childhood bully. They finally leave to buy some supper. They notice Will's bully acting again while driving. The group starts a fight with him, and the cops arrive and arrest him. Gerald walks into his class and observes an unusually large number of kids. Everyone is interested in the individual who solved the theorem. He requests that the mysterious person disclose themselves, but no one responds. Following that, Will is answering a question on the board when Gerald notices him. He tells him flatly that he cannot graffiti over there. Will hastily walks away. When Gerald looks at the board later, he realizes Will is a genius. Will goes to the Harvard pub as planned with his friends. Morgan mocks him for being sacked from his job as a caretaker. Chucky flirts with two Harvard students while pretending to have a history class with one of them. Clark appears and begins to angrily humiliate Chucky by displaying his grasp of history. He mocks him for his lack of expertise on the subject. Will enters the conversation, outwitting Clark and calling him out for plagiarizing his historical observations and being unoriginal. Clark feels ashamed and attempts to fling accusations back at Will, but Will handles the situation nicely and Clark backs off. Skylar, one of the females Chucky was flirting with, later approaches Will and speaks with him. She expresses her interest in him and provides him her phone number. They plan to go together sometime. Gerald goes to the Buildings and Grounds office to look for Will. He is informed that he did not arrive at work today, because Will received his job through him. They might call his parole officer. Will is in court, trying to explain why he hit a cop. According to the judge, he has a history of misbehavior. He also describes Will being in many foster homes, 3 of which he was removed from due to serious physical abuse. His accusations are not dropped, and his bail is set at $50,000. After that, he phones Skylar from jail to see how she is and asks if they can hang out soon. He is led to Gerald, who promises to assist him on 2 conditions. He will first agree to work harder on maths, and then he will see a therapist. Will plays the role of therapist fairly casually. Will and Gerald appear to be having a wonderful time while working on maths. He sees various therapists and struggles to open up. He continues to dismiss and belittle them. He doesn't pay attention to anyone. Gerald finally resolves to make Will meet with Dr. Sean McGuire, his college flatmate who is now a therapist. Gerald goes to work to meet Sean. They discuss how they haven't seen each other since Sean's wife died. Will, meantime, informs Chucky about his probation and counseling arrangement. Gerald persuades Sean to advise Will because he is highly brilliant and worth a shot. He also claims that they both come from South Boston. Will meets up with Sean and acts casually. They talk about books and exercise. He's arrogant. He begins to speak about an artwork in Sean's office. He mocks his artwork and ends up making assumptions and making nasty remarks about Sean's wife, to which he responds quite seriously, reminding Will of where the lines are. After Will leaves, Gerald tells Sean that he understands if he doesn't want to see Will again, but Sean is eager to see him again the next week. Sean is awake all night, immersed in his thoughts. Will and Skylar spend time together, and she discusses her education and elite upbringing, as well as her plans to attend Stanford to study medicine after graduating. They have a fantastic time in each other's company. Will greets Sean on time, and Sean leads him outside to explore the lake. He tells him that he remained up late thinking about Will's comments on his artwork, and that he realized Will is just a child who doesn't know what he's talking about. Will, he knows, had never left Boston. If Sean asked him about art, he could talk a lot about creative literature, but he couldn't express what the Sistine Chapel smelt like or how gorgeous its ceiling was in person. If he questioned him about women, he could talk for hours, but he'd never know what it was like to be truly content in someone's company. If he was questioned about war, he wouldn't know the first thing about it. He hasn't known true love or loss since he hasn't lived it. Sean discusses his wife dying of cancer while speaking. He doesn't see Will as a confident guy, he sees him as a timid youngster trying to play tough. By glancing at a painting, he deduced everything about Sean's life. Will is an orphan who went through difficult circumstances. Therefore, can his life be comprehended by reading Oliver Twist? He can only comprehend him if he is willing to open up and talk about his experiences, but he notices that Will is too afraid to do so. Sean departs, and everything begins to sink in for Will. Will calls Skylar from a payphone in the rain that evening. She answers, but he doesn't say anything and hangs up. Will attends Sean's therapy session. He remains silent throughout and departs when the time is up. Sean realizes he will not speak until he wants to. Will later works on solving mathematical issues and outwits a polished and sophisticated man with his solutions. Gerald is taken aback. Will finally starts communicating to Sean when he cracks his first joke. He confidently states that he went on a date and didn't care to check in with Skylar again. Sean refers to him as an amateur. Will argues that he understands what he's doing and that she's different from the other women he's dated. Sean believes he should call her, but he doesn't want to damage their current relationship by getting to know her more since it will become monotonous and boring. Sean mocks him for his approach, claiming that as a result of his behavior, he will go through life never really knowing someone, and mentioning his own wife's tiny behaviors that only he was aware of. They all laugh together. He claims that it is these insignificant memories that genuinely matter, and that people pick who they allow into their lives. He tells Will that he isn't perfect, and neither is Skylar. They simply need to figure out if they are right for each other, and the only way to find out is to try. Will inquires if he has considered remarrying, but he demonstrates his devotion to his late wife. Will twists Sean's own sentence, claiming that he will go through life without actually knowing anyone. Will pays Skylar a visit and apologizes for ghosting her. When he asks if they can go out again, Skylar claims she is too busy with schoolwork. She needs to assign the proton spectrum to ibogaine. Will promptly goes and returns with the answer to her task, stating that he couldn't wait until later to spend time with her. They go to a dog race together, in which Skylar's dog also competes. Her dog is victorious. She learns that Will grew up in South Boston and inquires about his experiences there as well as his brothers. He claims to have 12 big brothers, and Skylar expresses a desire to meet them. Will asks Sean if he regrets meeting his wife, and he denies it, noting that everything has advantages and downsides. Will asks when he knew she was the one for him, and he gives a date to demonstrate how well he remembers everything. They first met at a baseball game. Sean mentions the game's highlights but then admits that he wasn't even there to see the entire game because he was spending time with his future bride. Will makes fun of him for missing such an important event. He has no regrets about the time he spent with his wife over the course of his life. Will and Skylar spend time together and have intimate moments. She inquires when he will show her his home and allow her to meet with his friends and brothers. He promises to take her to meet them. Will and Skylar meet Chucky, Billy, and Morgan. They exchange amusing anecdotes and speak, but Will remains hesitant to share anything about his personal life with Skylar. Chucky mocks him, claiming that if she saw his living conditions, he'd be dropped like a bad habit. Will persuades him to hand over his car keys. Gerald meets with Sean to discuss Will. He thinks he should chat to him about his future because he has a lot of employment offers that meet Will's abilities. Sean believes Will is not yet ready. As a quarrel occurs, the discourse becomes heated. Sean wants Will to decide out what he wants to do with his life on his own. whilst Gerald wants him to study mathematics. He claims he sent Will to a job meeting. Will sends Chucky to the job interview instead of himself. Chucky's demeanor is easygoing, and the employees are perplexed. Skylar wonders if Will has a photographic memory, given his intelligence, and how something as complex as organic chemistry comes so easily to him while simply studying it for fun. He describes how he is just naturally gifted in the classroom. They become affectionate with one another. Skylar later expresses her desire for Will to accompany her to California. It becomes serious as Will expresses his dread of abandonment. He screams at her, telling her about his horrible background. He lied about having brothers. He is an orphan who has been molested. Skylar tells him she loves him, but he tells her he doesn't, breaking her. Will is reminded by Tom that he should be grateful to Gerald for working so hard with him. When Gerald inquires about the employment encounter, the situation becomes tense. Will claims he had a date and sent Chucky instead. Gerald is not happy. Will claims he does not want to spend his life explaining things to others. Gerald says he'd like to express his gratitude. Will boasts about how simple the proof is for him. While Gerald struggles to figure it out, Gerald bitterly acknowledges Will has more talent than him and burns the proof. He is upset that he just tosses it all away. Will attends a job interview for the National Security Agency and explains why he would not work for them in a funny and comprehensive manner. Sean asks Will whether he has a soulmate, and he says number. Will becomes defensive throughout their conversation about how low-paying occupations aren't regarded honorable. Sean recognizes that they are honorable. He tries to probe deeper by asking Will what he genuinely wants to do with his life, but Will becomes impractical once more, and this time Sean simply asks him to leave since he will not tolerate his folly. Will and Skylar exchange a heartfelt phone call. He calls to check in before she departs. She tells him she loves him, but he remains silent. He waits alone on a bench while Skylar takes her aircraft to California. Gerald is irritated because Will did not show up for his session with Sean. Will and Chucky are working on the construction site. He helps Will realize how he is wasting all of his talent and being ungrateful for the intellect he has been given. Sean and Gerald have a heated disagreement about Will, with Sean defending him by claiming that he has been emotionally wounded by his fear of abandonment his entire life. Sean is irritated because Gerald only wants him to study maths. They yell aggressively at one another and blame each other for their mistakes in the past. Will enters and Gerald departs. Sean suggests submitting his case to the judge for review. They discuss their personal experiences with physical assault. He informs him that he has ended his relationship with Skylar. Sean convinces Will that nothing that has happened to him is his fault. He sobs and clings on Sean while sobbing. Will takes the bus by himself and thinks. Sean and Will have their final meeting. Will talks about his new employment, which he gained thanks to an opportunity presented by Gerald. Sean hands him his phone number and they hug. Will celebrates his 21st birthday by having his pals show him the car they made for him. They are content together. Gerald pays a visit to Sean, and they both apologize to one another and work past their differences. Will drives over to Sean's house and leaves a letter. Chucky and the guys head to Will's house to pick him up only to discover him gone. Chucky feels relieved that he has finally moved outside of his comfort zone. Sean reads the note and learns that Will quit his job and went to see Skylar, which makes him pleased. Will embarks on a life-affirming journey to California in order to restart his relationship with Skylar and take a risk into the unknown. Please subscribe to assist the channel. Turn on notification and leave a like. Thank you for taking the time to watch. See you again soon.